Hello, adventurers, and welcome to another episode of our Offbeat Life. Today, we're delving into some really cool stories and actually a really cool company. We always talk about how individuals break free from conventional paths to forge their own way. Well, today, we actually get to talk with a company that is there to support you when you are making your own path. So, we're thrilled to have Julia on. She's a digital nomad and a part of SafetyWing's partnership team. So, welcome to the show, Julia.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here. I'm excited to chat with you.
Definitely excited to talk with you as well. For those that are not familiar with SafetyWing at all, could you explain its unique focus on remote workers, digital nomads, long-term travelers, that sort of thing?
Totally. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe your listeners have heard of SafetyWing in the capacity of our insurance. So we offer travel medical insurance for digital nomads and people who are on the road for longer stretches of time. But what we really are trying to do is so much bigger than that. We're essentially trying to build the first country on the internet. And what we mean by this is we're trying to build this comprehensive social safety net infrastructure that you can use no matter where you're from, and it can go with you wherever you go around the world. That's us in a nutshell.
The first country on the internet. I kind of like that term. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so that part alone sets it off from some of the other insurance companies out there. But like, in what ways do you see yourselves differing from traditional travel insurance companies?
So I think there's a couple things. One is when we're talking just about the insurance, most of the company, not everybody obviously, but most of us are actually nomads ourselves. So we're directly experiencing the problems that we are trying to also solve, which gives us like a really nice insight into what our users are experiencing. And then beyond that, we're in contact with them all the time and we create sort of solutions to their problems that are exactly geared to what the specific digital nomad consumer might need. I think a lot of these other companies, what might have happened is that, digital nomadism was very fringe even just 5 years ago. And since the pandemic, it's kind of been catapulted into the limelight and become kind of a trend that a lot of companies have like hopped on. I think it's probably fair to say, not everyone, but certainly some companies have probably taken what were legacy sort of products and kind of repackaged them or rebranded them to try to appeal to a nomadic consumer, whereas we have been completely remote from the start. Our founder actually had the vision for this whole company when he himself quit his policy job and became a digital nomad and realized with that he gave up his whole safety net from his home country, Norway. And he was like, well, that's an issue. And we need a solution for this. So I think we are known as a insurance company, but we really do a lot of work that runs so much deeper than that. And that's where the whole, vision comes into play of creating this country on the internet, giving a social safety net to people who are on the move all the time, who might not be so tightly associated with traditional nations or states in the way that the majority of people are. And so, yeah, just trying to create the kind of product that we ourselves would want to use.
That's outstanding, and I think that's important to note is that you and pretty much everybody there are digital nomads themselves, making a company for digital nomads. So you kind of know where people are coming from when you try to put a policy out there or something like that. So can you tell us a little bit about your background as a digital nomad and how you got to this position?
Myself personally, oh my goodness, it's a winding
I'm
path.
curious.
I figured out what digital nomads were by accident when I was still in high school, like a while ago. I don't want to date myself, but let's just say it was absolutely not on the radar at the time, and I had no idea how I was gonna make it to that. I didn't know what career path to do. I didn't know. I was still in high school. I still had university ahead of me, everything. But long story short, that was always in the back of my mind, even as I moved through university, even as I moved through my first job in the real world. And I eventually got to a point in that first job where I just kind of thought, you know what, I'm 23. What am I doing? This is not what I want right now. And I just quit with no backup job, with no backup plan, with minimal savings. And I was like, if I don't send it now, I never will. And so I bought a ticket to Vietnam and I went there and I visited a few other places as well along the way, and came back when the money ran out and got a remote job. And so since then, I have just continued living this lifestyle. I've been fully remote now for coming up to 5 years. Actually, yeah, coming up to 5 years since I quit that office job. And there's no going back.
For me, that was the hardest part, finding and acquiring the remote job. That's what took me the longest time. But it sounds like it's easier and easier nowadays for people to find these types of jobs.
Really.
Um,
Absolutely. I think there's a huge shift, not as huge as I would like it to be, but I think there definitely has been a huge shift in companies realizing that this is what people want and offering it. So I think there have never been more opportunities to have a remote job than now. That said, I was really lucky in that I got mine really fast, and was in it for almost 2 years. And then since then, I did a whole bunch of stuff. I freelanced for a while. I had my own business for a while. I just traveled off my savings for a while. So I really experienced every kind of nomad life because, as you know, and your listeners know, there's a million ways to be a digital nomad. It's not a cookie cutter formula. And so, yeah, and now I'm here with SafetyWing for just over 3 months and it's going great.
that's great. That's great. And so, a little background on SafetyWing. How long have they been around?
I believe they were founded in 2017, 2018, and they went through Y Combinator out in California. And we've had our main insurance product, Nomad Insurance, for a few years now, since the beginning, really. And like I mentioned,
Hmm.
we recently rolled out Nomad Health, which is our other insurance product, which is a more comprehensive, like full scale healthcare, like what you would get from a government or from, a company in some cases. So that's like our newer product. And then in this future, we're working towards this sort of comprehensive safety net that I told you about that would cover a whole bunch of other stuff than just healthcare.
That's outstanding. Yeah. So, let's talk about both. First, can you tell me a little bit about the Nomad Insurance, your flagship program?
Yeah, for sure. So Nomad Insurance is a travel medical insurance. I see it get called all kinds of things online. I even saw someone call it a remote work insurance. I'm like, what is that? I don't know. But it's a travel medical insurance that is super flexible and it can go with you wherever you go. You can use it in over 180 countries and you can cancel it at any time. And I think one of the biggest things that sets us apart to your question from before is that you can buy this insurance even when your trip has already started. Because to us, it doesn't really matter where you are when you start becoming a user. Most traditional insurances will want you to purchase before you leave. And a lot of the time, they will want you to sort of declare where you're going, and sometimes even like what date period. And as you know, when you're traveling the way that we do, you don't necessarily know. A lot of the time, it's just a one-way ticket. And a lot of insurances require proof of a return ticket to cover you, where we don't. Because, like I say, we are nomads ourselves and we know how it is. And even before I was working for SafetyWing, I actually used SafetyWing years ago. And that's exactly the reason why I went for it, because I was totally unsure of where my travels were going to take me. And so that was really, really appealing.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. And so then, how does that differ from the Nomad Health?
So it differs in terms of coverage. Nomad Insurance covers you for things like trip interruption and lost luggage and all the things that you could expect to come with a typical travel insurance. If your flight is delayed and you need to stay somewhere, like you can get that reimbursed, that kind of thing. And also for medical emergencies when you're abroad, like if something completely unexpected happens, you're probably going to be covered for it. Then Nomad Health is more of a comprehensive health insurance. So it would cover things like prescriptions, it would cover routine checks, it covers some elements of dental care. And so it's just more of like a bog standard health insurance that you would have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So yeah, you get just more comprehensive. So that's really good.
Exactly. And without the
So
travel element.
okay, okay. And so you were saying that SafetyWing is more than a travel insurance company. So in what ways? Like how does it really differ and how is it like bigger than just travel insurance?
So our big goal is not necessarily. Of course, we would like to be the best insurance company we can be, but our big goal is not to come after the insurance industry and oust the competition and all this kind of thing. Our big goal, like I said before, is to create the first country on the internet that has its own social safety net that is completely digitized and not necessarily associated with any singular nation. And with that, also develop what we're calling our Nomad Border Pass, which is an initiative spearheaded by our sort of other half, an organization called Tlumia. So with Tlumia, we're working to develop this sort of Schengen zone between different countries that already have declared some kind of digital nomad visa, of which there are about 70 or 80 at the moment. I'm not sure of the exact number. But yeah, that's really what's driving SafetyWing more than anything else. And we're really, really optimistic about this because with the rise of remote work, with the rise of technologies that enable this kind of borderless lifestyle, the demand for this is only going to grow. We've seen some really, really positive indicators of this. First of all, SafetyWing is doing great. So I think that in itself is a really strong point in that direction. Secondly, like I mentioned, the number of digital nomad visas are just growing and growing all the time. And the fact that Japan just launched theirs recently, I think is a huge indication that this is something serious and that this is no longer just like a passing trend, that this is actually a movement and a way of life that is here to stay. And then finally, that there was actually a report released by the World Economic Forum about the future of global digital jobs. So you have these really important players on a global stage that are basically inadvertently saying, this is here to stay. And what we're saying from our side is, okay, but there is no infrastructure to support people who live like this at the moment. So why don't we build it? Who knows better than us? Our team is full of incredible people from all over the world. I believe we're from 46 countries or something like that at the moment, in just 140 people. And like I said, most of us are nomads, and most of us have dealt with this issue of not being able to access things like, unemployment or sick leave or a pension scheme. Like these things go away when you are a nomad. And so we're trying to bring that all together. And I think that is so much bigger than just insurance. Insurance plays a role in it for sure. It's like a Lego piece in the bigger starship, but the end goal is much bigger than that.
That's awesome. And I love that it's nomads for nomads. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. Now, a lot of our listeners, majority of our listeners are families of different sizes. Some of them just starting out traveling and just with young kids. Some of them who are like still traveling, even though their kids have gone off to college or their own lives. So how does SafetyWing really work with families?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is one of the things that I don't have kids yet, but I really love one of these features of our Nomad Insurance, which is that if your kid is under 10, they're actually covered at no extra cost to you if you have an adult policy. So for example, if you're a family of four with two kids under 10 and both adults have coverage by SafetyWing, your kids are automatically also covered. And I think that's really awesome, don't you think? I mean, you have a kid. How would you feel
That is
about
really
that?
awesome. Yes, that is a really awesome feature. I mean, yeah, ours is now outside of that range barely, but
Oh.
it was good while it lasted. That's for sure.
Oh.
But I know you guys covered a lot of different things, and I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the frequently asked questions that I see on the forums out there on the Facebook and the Instagram and everything,
Oh.
where people are asking questions about insurance. So, like, yours is a subscription based model. So first and foremost, how do travelers get into it? How does it work? What if they miss something on the subscription? How does that subscription based model work?
Yeah, for sure. And when I answer this, I'm going to talk about the Nomad Insurance product specifically, because it kind of differs between the two. But yeah, so with Nomad Insurance, it's so easy, and I actually can't believe that it's that easy. I know insurance is something that myself included, nobody wants to read the details and get bogged down and like look at all this legalese that you don't necessarily understand. And you're like, what is a deductible? What is this? What is that? Am I going to be covered when I need you? Is basically all you want to know, right? So how the subscription model works is really easy. You purchase the policy online the way you would purchase or anything that you want to purchase online, any gadget. There's no pre-approval process. There's no long medical history form. There's no any kind of friction point where you might be, tempted to click off or give a lot of information about yourself before you even know if they're going to cover you. So it's really simple. You literally can just come on through the website and purchase it the day that you're flying out. Like I said, after you've already flown out, whatever works for you, whenever you remember. I'm super forgetful, so I sometimes don't even remember to do it, and then I'm already somewhere else, and I'm like, oh, I should have done this. So the subscription model, the pricing varies depending on what age bracket you're in, so I'm not going to go into that, but you're covered in 4-week cycles. And the policy itself lasts for 364 days, after which point, if you continue using us, you're considered to be on a new policy. So you're basically billed every 4 weeks, and you can cancel it at any time. So it's not like you're locked in for a whole year or anything like that.
Do they change the pricing very often, or is it pretty steady that the pricing stays the same?
Do you mean like how it changes per age bracket?
Okay, I get it this year because I'm doing a gap year. Okay, and I decided to get SafetyWing for this year. Now, 3 years from now, I decided to go ahead and do it again, do another gap year. Is the pricing going to be very similar, or does it change fairly regularly from year to year?
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Far it's been pretty steady. I mean, as with any growing and changing company, things evolve, things change. I think we always try to keep it as affordable as we possibly can for the coverage that we're offering. I know that we are one of the most affordable options on the market. Like, for example, in the last 6 months, I know that we have changed the pricing once, and that was in response to feedback from our users, actually. So what had happened was we got a lot of feedback that the deductible that we had was really confusing, and it was really something that people did not enjoy interacting with or thinking about. And it was frustrating because the first however many dollars of your claim you had to pay yourself, even though you were already paying for insurance coverage. So we heard this so much that we decided, okay, well, what if we just got rid of it? What if we just said, okay, there is no deductible anymore. We'll cover you from the first dollar that you pay. Of course, to offset that, we had to increase the price a little bit, but it's worked out perfectly fine.
That's really cool. And what I get out of that is really that you're dialed in with your customer base. How do you stay in touch? Like, how do you get that feedback?
Oh, I'm not the best person to ask about this. Our customer care team is probably better to speak on this, or our product team, but I know that both of them are very in touch with our customers. We have someone on the website 24/7, not the same person, obviously, but we have a customer care team who is online 24/7 to speak to people who have questions or anything like that. So we haven't outsourced that to a bot or anything like that, like most companies I feel like have in the last few years. So that definitely gives us a bit of an advantage. And then our product team is always talking to users, to see what they're doing, what they're wanting, where their frustrations are, and we keep a very close check on sort of how they're feeling about us and how we can improve and make their experience the best that it can be. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing: is that the people who use SafetyWing to be covered feel complete peace of mind. That's exactly what insurance is for.
Yes, peace of mind and a Band-Aid when I need it. So, no.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
All right. So another question I've seen out there a lot is about the travel duration limits. There's a lot of companies that have different limits on how long you can go on your trip. So what is SafetyWing's stance on travel duration?
So we can cover you from a 5-day trip all the way up to 364 days. Like I said, you wouldn't have to pay for the year up front or anything like that. You pay every 4 weeks. And you can cancel it at any time. So that's really the core of how we designed the product, because like I said before, nomads have no idea where they're going or how long they're going to be there for. And we've had feedback from people that say that they love that they can use our product on a one-way ticket. That's something that a lot of insurance companies won't insure you if you only have a one-way ticket. So in that sense, I suppose you can say, in effect, there isn't really a travel duration limit, because when your 364 days of coverage, expires, you can just continue the billing cycle and you will be put on another, like it would renew your policy. So effectively, there is no duration limit, but legally it's 364 days.
All right. All right. And what about those folks that are already abroad? Like maybe they didn't buy insurance when they've left. They decided later on that they decided they wanted to get something for whatever reason. Can they buy it while they're in transit?
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely can. I think we touched on this before, but it's super convenient exactly for that reason. I don't know about you, what kind of traveler you are, but I'm really chaotic and really all over the place, and I make really spontaneous decisions very last minute. And so this is incredibly on brand for me to buy an insurance policy when I've already moved to wherever I'm going next. So I love that SafetyWing can do that. It's super convenient, and yeah.
I haven't even been back to my home country in 3 years, so um, so I keep getting it wherever we end up being. So just continuing to pick it up every time it lapses. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I mean, the chances that you're going to be covered are really freaking high because we cover you in over 180 countries. We actually do also cover you when you go back home, only for a limited time, though. I think it's about 30 days, unless you're in the U.S. Then it's 50 days. The
Yes.
U.S. is its own world.
The U.S. is so, yeah, it's different like that. So you have to be careful when you're planning your trips back and stuff like that. And that's one of the tricks that I've found is figuring out how to figure out your trips back to the U.S. to visit if you're a U.S. citizen like we are without going over on your insurance because nobody wants to miss out or have something happen on day 16 when they're just trying to like eck out a little bit of extra time.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah,
But that's good that there's no real travel duration limits that you can get it while you're on the go if you wanted to pick something up. But now you just mentioned 180 countries. That's a lot of countries that you guys cover in. Which are the trickier countries that you have less time in or that you don't cover?
so you don't have any time limit in any country. Your time within a country will be dictated by your visa and like your immigration status more than your insurance status. That said, though, a lot of countries do require insurance to be able to issue your visa. Um, so that's something to keep in mind. But we will never say, oh, you've been in, I don't know, Thailand for 40 days, so now you aren't covered anymore because you've used 40 out of 40 Thailand days. Now you have to go somewhere else. um, there are a few countries that are not covered, and these aren't necessarily like fixed countries. It just tends to be countries that are on the OFAC sanctions list at any given time, and that obviously changes depending on the global situation. And that's more than anything to sort of avoid the risk of insurance being used to fund things that it shouldn't be funding, kind of sketchy activities and things like that. So that's the only real limitation to the countries that we don't cover. And the other one that's sort of its own case is the US. So we do cover you in the US with Nomad Insurance, but you have to purchase the US add-on, which is its own extra piece of coverage, and it does bump up the price a bit, but it's still really competitive compared to what you would pay in the US for US insurance.
Is that kind of because the U.S.'s pricing is so odd compared to other places?
Honestly, I
That's
don't know the
that's the nice way of
I
putting it, I
don't
think.
know the ins and outs of. I'm not a compliance expert, but yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of why it is that way, but it is how it is. What can I say?
The U.S. is its own entity for insurance. It's different, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And so there's a lot of people that we talk to as well have been doing adventure travel. So what kind of offerings, whether it's the Nomad Insurance or the Nomad Health, the new one, um, which one do you think is best for people that are looking to be adventure sports coverage type people?
Definitely Nomad Insurance. Definitely Nomad Insurance. So the way that we have a US add-on, we also have an adventure sports add-on. And this covers you for adrenaline sports, like the so-called higher risk sports that most insurance doesn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole, like skydiving. We will cover you if you go skydiving. Isn't that crazy? Um,
Wow.
the base policy itself actually covers you for, I counted to know the number. We cover you for 91 different sports. And if you get the
90
adventure add-on, you're covered for 34 more. So just to give you an idea of like the kinds of things that we would cover, it would be things like parasailing, or like I mentioned, skydiving. I believe we cover horseback riding, boxing, even quad biking, rugby, skiing, all sorts, even scuba, as long as you're going with a certified instructor. Dirt biking. Can you imagine an insurance company that will cover you for dirt biking? So
That's dangerous.
Nomad Insurance is definitely the ones for all the adventure folks you've got listening in.
All right, all right. Like, okay, and maybe another fun example. Recently I went to Machu Picchu and was hiking around over there. There's a place called the Rainbow Mountain.
Oh,
Pretty high altitude. And so, like, what kind of coverage would somebody need if they wanted to go someplace like this? Very high altitude, a little bit of risk for that type of area. Is there any kind of special coverage?
you have done your research. Look at this specific question. How high is the Rainbow Mountain? I've never been. Have you been there?
I think it was 5,000 meters. I hiked a different one called Pacuna, which is a little less of a high altitude, but it's also a less steep incline, so it was a much easier hike for a family. So, but the other one I almost went to, but then they scared me because they said 2 people died on this one over the
Wow.
last 5 years or something like that because of a heart attack because they didn't know how strenuous it was at the high altitude.
Wow.
So they scared me away from doing that one.
And the one that you climbed, is that also a similar altitude, just less incline, or is it a lower?
It's very similar. It's 4,800, I believe,
Mhm.
if I'm remembering my number right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, altitude will really mess with you. I had my first experience with altitude like in Argentina. In the north of Argentina, we were hitchhiking the Route 40 and got picked up and taken through this one stretch that is really high altitude. I think it was also 4,800, 4,900 at the highest point. And it was a dirt road and it was all just mountains around with no visible like housing or infrastructure of any kind. It was amazing. And we got out of the car. It was freezing outside also, even though it was the middle of summer, obviously, because of how high up it was. And we got out of the car to take a picture. And I literally felt winded, like I couldn't breathe. And I thought I was getting sick or I was really out of shape. And then I realized, oh no, wait, the air is literally just thinner up here. And it was really uncomfortable, let's say. I didn't have a heart attack, thank goodness. But we were chewing on those coca leaves that are meant to help you with the nausea and all that. So we were doing okay, but it was,
Yep.
yeah, I was really surprised by how breathless I was. So I can completely understand deciding to go for a less strenuous mountain at that height. Yeah.
Yeah. For those who don't know meters, I just looked it up also. So the shorter one that I did instead, it was 4,900 meters, which is 16,070 feet.
Wow.
The Rainbow Mountain, the big one everybody goes to, is 17,060 feet, 5,200 meters. Just a little bit higher.
Yeah, it sounds so impressive in feet. That's amazing.
I loved how, yeah, when you say it in feet, it sounds so much.
Oh, so good. You're like, yeah, I was up at 20,000 feet. Oh. Don't airplane go at 30,000 feet? Or is it 30,000?
Yeah. Yeah, that's 30,000 feet is when you're allowed to take your seatbelt off, I believe. That's cruising altitude, I believe. Yeah.
So these mountains are 2/3 of the way up to cruising altitude. Almost. Okay, more like halfway up.
Almost. Yeah.
Wow.
A little over halfway, but
Well,
yeah.
when you think about it like that, that's wild. So how close is Everest to the airplane?
Ooh, I have to check that one. I have not done that yet. I want to go to base camp one day, though.
Oh. Well, this segues in really nicely to answer your question, actually. So with the adventure sports add-on, like you so deviously found through your detective work, we actually cover you up to 4,500 meters on the regular base policy. And if you want to go higher, we cover you on the adventure sport add-on up to 6,500. So still, I believe that's enough for base camp, but not enough to get you to the top of Everest.
No. But it will get you to the top of Machu Picchu. That's only 2,400. So
Amazing. Oh, it's not that high, actually. I don't know why I thought it was.
no, Machu Picchu is not as high. Yeah.
I also
It feels pretty high, but it's not that high.
I also found out that there's different ways to measure the height of mountains. Like there's like it's contested whether like Everest is the tallest mountain from I don't remember the details now at which point, but there's like one measure which is the distance from sea level to the top of the mountain, and then there's the distance from like the base of the mountain to the top of the mountain. So if the elevation at the base
Okay.
is already 500 meters, for example, if you start at 500 instead of starting at zero,
Yeah.
so depending on how you measure it, the order, if you search tallest mountains in the world, you will get different answers depending on what you search. I didn't know about until the pandemic,
It's
actually. That's a
interesting.
fun piece of information I learned from being locked up at home.
Lo- lo- Logically, to me, it would be from sea level, I would assume, but that's just for me.
That's so interesting because for me, it would be the other one.
You think the base? Because sometimes the base of one mountain could be higher than the city you grew up in already. So not nearly. That's like measuring a skyscraper. Okay, there was a controversy in Chicago where we lived for a long time. Do you measure from the base to the top of the spire or to the top of the building? And then they build the antennas higher and higher and higher, making this skyscraper taller and taller and taller. I
Oh my
figure
goodness.
top
Well,
floor. Maybe build to the top floor.
yeah, I feel like the number of stories, maybe for a skyscraper, maybe that's the measure.
Maybe that. There you go. See,
I don't know. But I'm also not
that's
an
a
engineer
well. That
or
was
an
a fun.
architect.
That's a that's a fun tangent.
Cool.
But all right. So altitude is one of those exceptions, as well as those adventure activities.
And that's sorry, another really important thing to mention about this adventure sport add-on is that for any sports really, there's a couple of exceptions that I feel like I need to mention to be fair, which are that if you're practicing as a professional or as an instructor, then you're not covered. If you're practicing with the intention to compete, also not covered. And if it's in an organized capacity, which basically kind of means like people are expecting you there or relying on you to make the practice go forward or anything like that. So there's a few exceptions to this rule, and with everything that I'm talking about, like there's no guarantee. Everything's a case by case basis, but you can be pretty sure
Yeah.
that you would be covered if
So I
you're
mean, yeah,
not feeling good idiots.
you're the dirt bike instructor who's doing it times a day, going on the activity is totally different than somebody who's going on it for a 30-minute activity. Yeah, I get it.
You got it exactly. Yeah.
All right. And what about the scooter or motorbike risk
Oh.
type coverage? Is that included or is that extra as well?
So, this is really popular, as you can imagine, because so many people in Southeast Asia, the only way to get around is with a little scooter, a little motorbike. So, yeah, that's a very good question. On the base policy with Nomad Insurance, you're covered up to 50cc, which are like the little scooters. I've actually never seen a 50cc in the wild, or if I have, I haven't realized that it was 50cc. I'm in Italy right now, and I assume they are absolutely everywhere. If they're the ones that make a lot of noise, then I know which ones they are. Um, but then with the adventure sports add-on, if you want to go a little bit faster, then we do cover you up to 150, which I think is more like the standard. When I was in Southeast Asia, the one I rode was 125, I believe, and I think that's kind of like the standard scooter over there at least. So yeah, that's how that works with the Nomad Insurance add-ons.
Yeah, I think with 150, you're getting a lot closer to a motorbike. So yeah, I mean, I think I've been on a small motorbike that was like 70 cc's with dirt bike. That's nothing. So
Mm. And again, with
all
that also,
right.
there's exclusions, like you need to be properly licensed depending on where in the world you are. That licensing rule will be different. So it's best to check with wherever you are in the world when you're wanting to use this add-on. You need to be wearing a helmet. You can't obviously be intoxicated in any capacity or anything like that. So basically, just be a sensible person, and it should all be fine.
Do you care at all if somebody has an international driver's license versus getting some kind of licensing where they are?
I am not 100% sure, to be completely honest. I don't want to say something that's not true. But what I do know is that it really doesn't depend so much on, like, we go off of what we get from the police report. If something were to happen, we would need a police report of what
Hmm.
happened. And it's really up to the local police to decide if you are properly licensed or not. So it's the country where you're at. It's okay to have, I don't know, for example, an Italian license and then also an international license that allows you to drive over there. And the police there are fine, then we should be fine with it. So it really just depends. It's a case by case basis.
Should I assume that that's the same thing for cars, for driving a car?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure what our car coverage is or if we even have any. I don't know. To be completely honest, that's something that's not thought so far.
Okay. That should be a good one to look at. All right. All right. That's fine. So I know that we talked about the U.S. having its being its own entity, 15 days for U.S. citizens going back to their home country, or even just anybody going to the U.S. is 15 days, if I remember right. But what about your home country? If for those listeners that are not U.S. citizens?
Right. So if you are going back to your home country, you get a certain number of days of coverage in your home country for every 90 days that you're abroad and covered by Nomad Insurance. So like you said correctly, for people whose home country is their US, they get 15 days of home coverage for every 90 days they're away. If you're from pretty much anywhere else that we cover and use that as your home country, then you get 30 days of coverage for every 90 days you are away. And just to clarify also,
All right.
you mentioned something about that you're only covered for 15 days in the US no matter where you're from. That's totally not true. It's just if you have the US add-on, you can be completely covered in the US while you order.
Ah, even better. I like it. And thank you for that clarity.
Of course.
And then let's talk medical emergencies, because
Oh,
that type of
well,
thing unfortunately does happen. Um, so what's the process? Because I know some things are covered, especially for big emergencies. What's the process? What do people have to go through in order to get coverage during an emergency?
yeah, that's a very good question. And it's something that you can definitely get a bit down on when you're looking through a policy and reading all the things. No one wants to look at an insurance policy when they want to buy and see something like what happens to me if I die, like where's my body being spent. It can get really grim really fast. So in terms of medical coverage, we cover all sorts of emergencies, unforeseen circumstances. If something were to happen to you while you are abroad and you need diagnosis, things like that, something that's never happened to you before, all of that is, eligible to be covered on Nomad Insurance, up to $250,000 dollars maximum limit.
250,000. It sounds like a lot, obviously, yes, but in a lot of countries, that kind of money will go a lot further, depending on where your coverage or what you're doing, what happened to you, or where you get
Absolutely.
covered. Now, will that be like, okay, if I'm in Thailand and I'm on that scooter and I get hit? Now things could go bad. I get a broken arm. Say it's just a broken arm. We're good. We're in the hospital. We're getting that broken arm fixed, and that needs to be covered at that hospital. Will you take care of it there? Do you reimburse me and I pay them, or how does it work?
Yeah, totally fair question. So again, the US is always the exception. I believe that in the US, we do pay the hospital directly. So nothing has to come out of your pocket. In the rest of the world, we reimburse you the cost. And in order to do that, to your question earlier about what's the process like, the best advice I can give you is collect as many documents as you can, even if you don't think you need it. Every receipt, every report, every invoice, everything that crosses your path while you're going through, just collect all the paperwork, because then it will just make your life so much easier when it comes to filing a claim.
I know a lot of folks that are very detail oriented. They take lots of photos just in their daily life, and I can imagine if something bad happened that they would document it as well, video, photo, whatever. For they might even be putting it on their own YouTube channel for all I know. Some of these folks out there, and that's all. That's all good. But do you take that type of documentation as well, or is it only going to be like the official documentation, police, hospital, receipts, that type of thing?
That's a really good question. I'm not a claims expert. You'd have to ask someone from our claims team who deals with these things on a daily basis. Um, from what I've seen going through and putting in my own claims, just for, I use Nomad Health. So for routine like health checks and things like that, I've done a couple of claims which follow the same process. And from what I've seen, it is more those reports like a statement from the doctor or an invoice saying how much you paid and then the receipt that proves that you paid it and things like that. If something were to happen, like you were to get an electronic device stolen, for example, or, you had the unfortunate motorbike accident and you need to file a police report, then that is something we would also need. And to be covered with the theft that I said before, we have another add-on that covers you for up to $3,000 of electronic theft for laptops, phones, cameras, things.
And folks are traveling the world, so sometimes the notes they get from the doctor might not be in English. They might
Yeah.
not find an English speaking doctor. So what if it is written in Thai or in they're in Russia, they're in Cyrillic or something? I don't know. It's something totally different. Do they need to get it translated or?
I love this question. It's such a thoughtful question. It's a very good point, and I was very pleasantly surprised to find out when I recently went to the doctor in Italy. I checked with our team before I went to make sure I knew exactly what I needed to get, and no, the answer is no. It doesn't need to be in English. It can be in the local language, and that's completely fine by us. I know that when you're dealing with something like this, when you're doing an insurance claim, it's not the funnest thing in the world. It's not a party. It's not a great time. And the last thing you want to think about is, do I have these documents? Do I have this? Do I have that? Oh, I have to translate this. And so as much as we can minimize the burden, we will. And so, that's a really great example of something like that, where we will take it in the original language of where you are at the time. And that's completely fine.
I love it. It sounds like that's another example of how tuned in to your customers you guys are. Because I've heard of horror stories elsewhere where they had to get it translated in English and it had to be by the same doctor, and it's, yeah, not very good from other travel stories that I've heard.
Uh,
So that's really cool that it's like we don't want you to think you already had that burden of having an accident or having the family member have the accident. You're taking care of the paperwork for them. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also when it comes to translations, I've recently gone down this huge rabbit hole and I'm somehow now like an international document. Well, I would hesitate to say expert, of course, but like I've been through it with translations and things like that recently because we've been in the process of doing citizenship by descent from our partner here in Italy. And so with that, it's a lot of translations. And when you translate something for it to be valid in another country, you have to legalize it in the country that it's done, and then you have to get an apostille. I don't know how you actually say that word in English, but you need an apostille that basically makes it valid internationally. Otherwise, the translation is only valid in Italy. Does that make sense? From what I understood,
Yeah.
is the case. So that it's just a bureaucratic nightmare. And again, it's not what you want to be dealing with when you've been in a situation that has ended up with you having to make an insurance claim.
Yeah. Totally. And so I think we've talked about several different hypotheticals. Um, what about some like case studies of people that have gone through things and actually used SafetyWing?
Yeah. So I didn't want to share any specific stories, even if they are anonymized, just for, I don't know, confidentiality's sake or anything like that. Like, there's plenty of reviews online. There's plenty of people writing about their experience and how they feel about SafetyWing online. But one story that I think is really impactful that maybe a lot of people aren't so aware of is that when COVID hit, we were a young company. It was before my time, but I've heard this story. And we were a young company. COVID hit. Obviously, everybody wanted to immediately fly home and avoid getting stuck wherever they were while they were abroad. And it was a big decision to be made by the sort of leadership of SafetyWing, who, like I said, was young at the time, was very reliant on, investments and things like that. And so it basically came to the point of, do we send everyone home, and basically foot the bill and risk basically going out of business? Or do we do what most of the other insurance companies are doing and just invent this clause that says COVID, is not covered and you're on your own and it sucks? And after some deliberation, they decided to send everybody back home and hope for the best. And this turned out to be really positive. I wish I had the number of how many people we did that for. I looked for it, and I don't think we have that information, but it was a significant portion of our user base at the time. And I think this is something that in the long run gained us a lot of respect and credibility and trust, because then when people started hearing about SafetyWing, that was what we were associated with for a time at least. Of course, these things always evolve and change. Um, but I think that's a real testament to one of our values. We're incredibly value driven at SafetyWing, and one of our values that this story is a really good example of is stand up for what you believe in. And what we believed was right at that time was sending people home, to be with their loved ones, to feel safe, to be in a more certain environment amidst the complete chaos and uncertainty of what was going on at the time. I mean, you remember what that time was like. No one knew what was going on, how long it was going to last, what life was going to be like. Still crazy. It's like a fever dream now when you look back on it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is a really great example, I would say, of how we do things, and our take on the world and the way things should be.
Yeah, and that is excellent because I've heard stories, and actually, someone shared a story of how they used SafetyWing to get out of the country they were in, and you should go back and listen to that whole episode. But I'm going to play a little snippet of it here so people can take a listen and see her story firsthand. So here you go.
Yes. So we had travel insurance with Safety Wings in the immediate days before things started shutting down. We were in Vietnam and we were making our way to Malaysia because we were going to be meeting up with you guys there.
Yeah.
And this whole kind of Malaysia kind of pop up in Johor Bahru. So as things started happening, I was like, well, maybe we should leave because there was talk about closing places down. And so I started to look into flights to leave Vietnam. And it was a good thing I did because I booked a flight. And then the next day, Vietnam announced they were closing its borders that night at midnight. So, and we were on a flight that afternoon. So that was like good. And then during that daytime, we were flying into Singapore. And then Singapore announced they were closing their borders at midnight that night as well. And like we just like scraped by because we flew into Singapore and then getting through customs and immigration. And then we got a taxi over. But even still, you're looking at a 2 to 3 hour window to get
Yeah.
from Singapore over to Johor Bahru. So we just barely, I think we got to the condo there around like 11:30 at night. So it was just like cutting it close. So yeah, we were there and not really sure initially what was going to happen pretty much as well. I think the day we got there, the next day, Malaysia announced that they were going to be implementing that movement control order. So I had really 24 hours the next day to go out and buy groceries for 2 weeks. And so we were locked in the apartment there. So I did that and we kind of set up thinking, okay, well, we'll wait out this 2 weeks and see what happens. And then obviously, as the world knows, things progressed well beyond the 2 weeks. So as that was happening, Safety Wings under the political, there's some political clause in the insurance, which was if there is a worldwide event where they declare a level 3 or 4 security measure implementation, then that political evacuation clause would come into effect. And when the United States declared that level 4 threat, that clause came into effect. But then you also only had 10 days from the date it became the level 4 threat to actually enact on the insurance clause. So for about a week, I contemplated, do we wait this out? Do we see what happens or do we go back home? And so I decided we were going to go back home. So anyways, I would use Safety Wings again in a heartbeat. Like that
Yeah.
whole process was simple, simple, simple. I made one phone call and they sent me a form to sign, basically fill out that, it was obviously the three of us on the policy and that I wanted to activate this political evacuation clause. And then that was it. They kind of took care of the rest. They booked our flights, which that was another kind of huge challenge in and of itself, because as airspace was closing as well during COVID, they closed all of the routes from Southeast Asia over to North America. They closed them that way. So they had to then rework all of our flights to go back through Europe to Canada. And then and it was hourly, even multiple times a day checking because more and more airlines were closing things down. So our flights kind of kept getting bumped and bumped and bumped. And sometimes I was actually sending a message to Safety Wings, and it's only because of, the volume of what they were dealing with. It's not because I felt like they weren't doing their job, but I was also like pretty much multiple times a day checking to make sure our flights hadn't been canceled because I think they were like 3 or 4 days out kind of thing, like once they finally got booked. And they got canceled many times. So then it was kind of back to like figuring out scrambling, and they would rebook us on some other flights, a different itinerary. But sometimes it was me going to them to say, our flight just got canceled on the one you had booked and we need to figure something else out. Anyways, it was like 70, what was it? My girls actually kept a timer. It was like a 90 some hour journey back
Oh,
from Malaysia to Canada because we went from, Johor Bahru, and because of the movement order, we had to fly from there to Kuala Lumpur, and then from there to London, and then to Amsterdam, and then to Calgary. But you know what? Like, yeah, Safety Wings was great.
yeah.
Definitely my travel insurance choice.
All right. And now that's a really, really good story. It was great the first time I heard it. It's also great to kind of hear firsthand from folks that have gone through this, especially now knowing, like, I didn't realize SafetyWing was that young, that it came out in 2017. So only 2, 3 years later, to send pretty much your big user base home and taking that chance of maybe bankrupting the company or having to start over from scratch. And yeah, monetary wise, it was a good decision to work with your customers and hold to your ethics like that. I love it. So very.
Yeah, when I heard that story, it made me really pleased to be part of SafetyWing. It made me be proud to be part of a company that lived by their values, because I think it's so easy to be all talk, and it's easy to live by your values when things are good and easy. It's not easy to live by your values when you're really in a moral dilemma and really facing a very difficult decision. But yeah, I'm just really happy.
It was a difficult decision for those listening who are planning to set sail basically and start traveling with their families and haven't yet. We don't know what the future is going to bring. And it's good to find some companies that are or already have shown a proven track record for, thinking of the customer first. And if something bad does happen again sometime, knock on wood, it's good to know that there are companies that you can rely on in those types of situations. So do your research. Like Julia said here, there's the stories out there. People have shared their own stories on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and all these different areas and platforms. You can see their firsthand case studies out there for yourself. But yeah, so also wanted to make sure I gave you a chance here at the end to talk about like where you see the future of SafetyWing going at this point. So we're going on about 7 years now since SafetyWing came about. So where do you see the future of SafetyWing going?
Really good question. Like I said, we're incredibly driven by this singular mission, which is to create the first country on the internet and a global social safety net to go with it. So that's why we get up in the morning. That's the big reason why a lot of people who work at SafetyWing choose to spend this portion of their time, as our CEO says. So I love the way he puts it. He always says, "Thank you for choosing to spend this time building this dream," like something like that. I can't remember how he puts it exactly, but I see the future of SafetyWing moving towards building the first global social safety net, first global citizenship, and in that way, building a borderless country on the internet that anybody can be a part of, no matter where they're from, and ultimately improve global mobility, global equity in terms of how easy it is to move around the world. Because at the moment, unfortunately, there are real barriers to it and privileges that play in making it easier for some people than others. So that's our big mission. Insurance is the first step in that process. We're trying to create a sort of robust benefit package that anyone can take with them on the road, no matter where they're from, no matter where they go. and it can support them through every phase of life. They can have access to a pension. They can have access to, maternal, paternal leaves, unemployment, God forbid, like disability if they need it, if something happens. And so we really see that being the future as people start to live more and more remotely.
Oh, that's excellent. Yes, that's a good future, being this global safety net. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I love talking about it because when people hear it, I think it's something that really resonates, especially people who have been living this lifestyle for a while, because like I say, these are frictions that they will have come up against already. I mean, I know myself, I was freelancing for a few years and I did not have any kind of backing from anywhere. Like I didn't have any kind of safety net in any sense. So it was just whatever I could put together myself, and that's fine. But when you could have something that gives you so much more peace of mind, why not? And something that is talked about a lot is something that's talked about a lot at SafetyWing is seeing countries as products in the future, like a product you can choose from, rather than something that you were tied to just because of where you were born. So that's something that we talk about more with our sister company, Plumia, or organization, I should say, Plumia. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, it has been great to have you on today and give our listeners a chance to hear firsthand from somebody at the company so that they can make their own thoughts, their own decisions about what they want based on, you can be a person. It's not just the company. It's not just this logo. You're one of 140 people from 40 different countries living the life, and really, providing the type of coverage that you want to the people that are out there living that type of life as well. So again, thank you very much. You've been very detailed, and you've given our listeners something to think about. So.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was a real blast talking to you and getting to share more about what we're doing, because I feel like a lot of people know what's for the insurance, but maybe don't know the bigger mission behind it. And I think it's one of them. So, yeah, thanks for having me on and taking the time.
You're welcome. Is there anything that you wanted to say that we didn't get around to, that you wanted to make sure that we put out there today?
No, we covered a lot of ground. And if anyone wants to check out SafetyWing, I'm sure the website will be in the show notes. Is that correct?
So that's all in the show notes. Yeah. So yeah, the website will be in the show notes. Everything.
Awesome. So have fun travels to everybody who's listening. Enjoy this wonderful world we have. Keep exploring, and yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. All right, so that's a wrap on our fascinating coverage and conversation here with Julia from SafetyWing. Remember that life is a journey, not a destination, as the saying goes. Keep exploring, stay curious, stay safe, and never stop learning. Until next time, this is your host, David Cole, signing off. Safe travels, everyone.
We just want to see something bigger than us, to see and smell and taste something completely new. We just want to travel the world, travel.